Hey everybody, today is a great day because Emil and I are filming a new product video. We have 3 new products to talk to you about, and the first 2 that we're going to talk to you about is our BALLER edition of Mushroom Magic Matcha.
And the Latte version, which is similar to the normal Mushroom Magic Matcha and the Mushroom Magic Matcha Latte, is the addition of a very high-end coconut creamer, a little bit of cane sugar, and stevia. So this is definitely the more indulgent version, and that's the more purist version, and especially this time around, because in the last Mushroom Magic Matcha we went with a lower end matcha, still of great quality, but the flavor isn't totally there, the looks aren't totally there, so we added a little bit of stevia to add some of that natural sweetness that you can find in very high-end matchas. However, for this one we actually went pretty much as high as we could go in terms of matcha quality, and that's why this is a BALLER edition. We had a lot of requests for a Mushroom Magic Matcha that had a better taste, a nicer green color, something that had Ceremonial grade matcha in it, which we'll touch on that in a second. And that's what we did. We were at Supply Side West a few months ago in the fall. For those of you who are unaware of this, this is one of the biggest supplement expos on the planet, I think. It happens in Las Vegas, and we make a lot of industry connections there. And this year, we had already released Mushroom Magic Matcha, so we were walking around there with a completely new perspective, and that was to find more matcha. There was one vendor there. They work together with a company in Japan. They have farms there, and they grow very high-end matcha. So we did a tasting with them, and the matcha that ended up in the new Mushroom Magic BALLER edition is this exact matcha, and it was from the higher end of their catalog. It's a first flush picking that has been shade grown. So for those of you that don't know a whole lot about matcha cultivation, it's a really unique process. It all comes from the Camellia sinensis plant, and that's where normal green tea and also black tea, oolong tea, it's all coming from the same plant, Camellia sinensis. And there's a bunch of different ways in which you can process it. So green tea is more fresher, it's not oxidized. Black tea, oolong teas, and there's a big range in them. There's all sorts of different levels of oxidation. And when you oxidize something, usually things like chlorophyll go away. That's why you go from green tea to black tea. A lot of that chlorophyll goes away, and you're left with different compounds, different types of flavonoids. So there's different effects associated with black tea due to the fermentation and oxidation, and also different tastes. Now, if you want the highest expression of the Camellia sinensis plant, you have to look towards matcha. And the reason for this is that sunlight degrades some of the beneficial and flavor compounds that are in green tea, or Camellia sinensis. Not green tea, but we are definitely dealing with green tea here. If sunlight hits the plant, and some of the amino acids like L-theanine can get turned into some of the catechins. So you end up getting some more of these polyphenol type compounds, but you end up losing the L-theanine content, which is really important for matcha and higher end green teas because it adds a bit of umami flavor. And if you shade grow the Camellia sinensis, you get more floral notes. And in the case of matcha, what happens is you shade grow for 3 weeks, once a year. The Camellia sinensis plant grows every year, and you can harvest it every year. But right before harvest, for 3 weeks, you cover it and you shade it. And all of those young leaves end up maturing to mature bigger leaves under complete shade. Now, this can only happen once a year, because if you do that shade growing prolonged more than those 3 weeks, you're just going to decrease the vigor of your Camellia sinensis plant, and you might actually kill it. So that single period, that 3-week period of shade growing, actually has benefits throughout the whole harvest season. So that's really interesting, and it means that the lower grade, or the culinary grade matchas, which is basically what we used in our normal Mushroom Magic Matcha because it provides a lot of the same benefits and tastes at a much lower cost, those come later in the season. When we talk about first flush, it's the first picking. So you do the 3 weeks shade, and those leaves are going to have the most benefit from the shade growing process, and you pick those, and you dry them very meticulously. There's no fermentation happening, there's no oxidation happening, and then you gently stone grind it. So not a whole lot of oxidation happens. So again, the main thing that's going on here is that we're growing in a very gentle way. There's no sunlight that can degrade things. There's more chlorophyll because of this, and there's a lot brighter color. And you can see this very clearly, so we should mix them up.
Yeah.
But before we do that, I will just say that right before recording this, an hour before, we've been taste testing these and refamiliarizing ourselves with the taste and the effects. And in true Nootropics Depot fashion, I went a little bit higher in dose. So I took 2 scoops of one from the normal one and one from the latte, and also playing around with warm and cold water. So we'll tell you about some of the flavor experiences. And Erica, how much did you take?
I had 1 full glass, so a half a serving of the regular Mushroom Magic Matcha, and then a half a serving of the Mushroom Magic Matcha Latte.
So in Erica, you can see maybe a calmer demeanor, and in me, you can see maybe a bit more of an energized effect, which is interesting because the overall caffeine dose in a single scoop is 75 milligrams. And this is the same as the original Mushroom Magic Matcha, but there is something interesting going on here. We didn't add caffeine anhydrous this time to buffer up the caffeine content. We just added in more matcha. This is a BALLER edition after all. We knew it was going to be expensive, and we knew if we wanted to really maximize the taste and the effects of the matcha, we had to go up a little bit more. So because we were dealing with a premium product already, we decided, okay, we're going to increase the dosage of matcha from 1,000 milligrams in the original formula to 1,500 milligrams. So not only are you getting more matcha, you're getting something that's a first flush shade-grown matcha. And when it comes to ceremonial grade, we see this a lot in the US and other parts of the world. This, of course, refers to the fact that in Japan, matcha has a very important place in society, and it's consumed through ceremonies. And if you've seen the show Shogun, which we've recently been watching, there's a couple of scenes where matcha is being prepared. And the preparation of the matcha is an art form, the serving of the matcha is an art form, and I've actually experienced one of these ceremonies in Japan. It's really interesting, and the taste is quite intense because it's made with a small amount of water. But the really important thing there is because it is so concentrated in flavor, and there's a whole ceremony around it, you obviously want to have the highest quality of matcha. So even though there's no ceremonial grade certification program, which we have a bit of a problem with, just calling things ceremonial grade, because we're not doing ceremonies in the US or outside of Japan. So it's hard to quantify things. What is really happening is that ceremonial grade is a bit of a synonym for just high-end matcha. And that's exactly what we have here. I think we have the highest end matcha, and just because it is such a popular word to use, we actually put ceremonial matcha on our jar. And we really feel like this matcha is befitting of that. And I will show you why I think that right now. This is the standard edition. I'm going to mix it up. You'll see what it looks like. Because we've already had 2 servings of it, I don't think I'm going to drink a whole lot of it.
No, but it's nice to have it for the taste and to give you a real life experience of what this is actually going to be like. So
smell-wise,
on first impression, this Mushroom Magic Matcha BALLER edition has a very different smell profile than the first edition of Mushroom Magic Matcha. It smells a little bit chocolatey. And Emil, you said that that's coming more from the mushrooms and the mushroom extracts that are in this Mushroom Magic BALLER edition.
Correct. So one of the extracts that we put in here is the Cordyceps 10-1, which if ever smelled that, it smells really chocolatey. And the Lion's Mane 8-1 dual water ethanol extract, which the Cordyceps 10-1, by the way, is also a dual water ethanol extract, they both smell chocolatey. So it adds a bit of a chocolatey note to the smell. And I have to say, when you make this hot, the normal standard edition, not the latte, it brings out a little bit more of that chocolatiness from the mushrooms, and in my opinion, it detracts from the matcha flavor. So how I've been using this one is with cold water. I think the cold water brings out more of the floralness of the matcha, which I really prefer. And it kind of mimics if you go to a Japanese restaurant and sometimes they have iced green tea on the menu. Sometimes it's just a scoop of matcha powder in water, and I really like that taste profile. And that's exactly the taste profile that I get with the Mushroom Magic Matcha Baller Edition when I add cold water and I shake it up. So that's what we're going to do here. You can definitely drink it warm too, but we found, and especially this morning, that the latte version actually benefits from some of that more chocolatiness, a bit more of that richness from the mushrooms, and I actually really prefer to drink the latte version hot. So that's just my personal preference, but I would recommend, if you're starting out, try it in both, but know that, at least for me, cold is the way to go for the normal Mushroom Magic Matcha Baller Edition, and hot is the way to go if I want a little bit more of a luxurious, relaxing experience.
With the latte version.
With the latte version.
Yes. And the flavor difference is also pretty dramatic between our first Mushroom Magic Matcha and the Baller Edition. And one aspect of that is just purely from the quality of the matcha. You can see that it's quite a bit darker in color.
But
and
also,
it's also
like, more
deeper
vibrant
in flavor. Yeah, absolutely.
Like, it's a darker green, but it's a more vibrant green. And we'll show you the powder of the normal Mushroom Magic Matcha too, and we'll mix that up, and you'll really see the big difference that shade growing can bring, which is more chlorophyll. So, it's nice that it's really green, but it's maybe not adding a whole lot except chlorophyll, and we're not really sure if chlorophyll really adds a lot in terms of effects here, but it sure looks really beautiful, and it tastes better, and I think the effects are better too.
From my experience drinking matcha, the darker green the matcha is, the more grassy and natural it's going to taste, and usually deeper in flavor as well. So I think the dark green of this really also kind of brings home the fact that this is a super, super high quality matcha. And if you are somebody who likes to drink matcha a lot and you've tried it from some different places, you can probably also attest to the fact that the dark green is usually a signifier of higher quality. And that happens to be the case with our Mushroom Magics, because we have this Baller Edition, super dark green, and then our first version, which is not going to be so dark and definitely doesn't have as strong of a really intense matcha flavor.
Absolutely. And I'm going to make a bit of noise here. And for the occasion, we're also mixing this in a Japanese coffee container. From Kinto. So I think that's a nice thing to add, because this is a pretty premium Japanese product, and we're putting a very premium product in there to mix it. Also from Japan. I'm also shaking it quite a bit because it aerates it a little bit, and traditionally you would whisk matcha, and that actually adds a bit of air into it too, and that adds a nice texture. I feel like shaking very vigorously, at least with this one, don't do that with the hot water, it will explode, but with cold water, shake it as hard as you can. Really, if you've ever made a gin fizz, that level of shaking.
So, as Emil mentioned earlier, we've both tried the Mushroom Magic Matcha Baller Edition, the normal one and the latte this morning. So we're not going to drink this entire glass because we're both quite caffeinated at this point, but you can see how beautifully dark green it is. We got a little bit of foam on top, and this is the Mushroom Magic Matcha, not the latte version. So even without like that milk element, it still creates a nice foam. And we're going to taste it so we can tell you what we think.
Oh man, it's really good. So I actually wasn't a part of the flavor testing. It was a little bit hard to get me a sample while we were doing the flavor testing. So I only ended up tasting the finished product. But for a month, all I heard was just how good it tasted. And I thought it was going to be maybe a bit more similar actually to the original Mushroom Magic Matcha. I wasn't expecting such a significant upgrade in flavor. But the first sip I took, it almost took me back to that matcha ceremony I had in Japan. Of course, that is at a completely different level even than what's possible here, but if we put that kind of matcha in here, there still is, an increase above an increase, just like with anything in life. You can really reach for the top. I think I paid something like $25 for a single cup of matcha at the ceremony. Maybe I got ripped off because I'm a tourist too. But it takes me back there. It takes me back to those really nice, grassy, what Erica was saying, but not grassy in a bad way. Like, to me, it's precise in flavor. It's robust in flavor, and with the cold water, I don't really taste the mushrooms in there.
No, not at all. It tastes really silky, and when I drink this, it doesn't feel like there's anything except for super high quality matcha. So if you are somebody who really likes matcha and you are a bit of a purist, but you're looking for those beneficial mood effects and focus effects from the mushrooms, this would be a great option to try. This was also a slightly different approach because the matcha is so high quality and the flavor is great. There isn't an additional sweetener.
Yeah, this is
the Mushroom
completely
Magic Latte
pure.
Mushroom Magic BALLER edition.
Yes. We might mess up the names a little bit. It's quite a mouthful with the BALLER edition. So maybe let's just, since it's all about matcha, let's shorten it, make it easier for ourselves. We're just going to be talking about the BALLER editions from now on.
Yes.
So BALLER Latte or BALLER Standard. And what we just showed you and tasted is the BALLER Standard, and that's definitely my favorite in the range now. I think also in terms of effects, it's like I was saying earlier, the taste is more precise, it's more clear, it's kind of like a laser beam. You can really taste those classic matcha notes, but that translates into the effects too. I feel like the original Mushroom Magic Matcha will actually stay in my rotation too, because it provides a very different effect. The normal one is a bit fuzzier in flavor. It's not as defined, you can tell that there's green tea in there, but it's not that laser beam of like perfect green tea flavor. And in terms of effects, it's like that too. It's a little bit fuzzier, it's a little bit rounder, and I actually really like that for its mood effects, but it makes it less functional for me as a focus enhancing aid. So even though I really like the Mushroom Magic Matcha, the normal one, I haven't found it very useful for work, but I found it very useful for leisure. So if I'm going out into nature or something like that, a bike ride, going to see a movie, going out into the city, and I need a little bit of energy and not a lot of energy that's really going to dial in my focus, reach for the normal Mushroom Magic Matcha. But here I have a very unique option now, because this makes me very focused, very driven, very confident. It is very stimulating at 2 scoops, which really is only delivering 150 milligrams, which I'm used to from the coffee I drink every day. But this feels on a different level. And that's also because of the mushrooms, which we'll talk about next. But let's mix up the latte version now. Absolutely. Or should we do the original Mushroom Magic Matcha so you can see the color difference?
Let's mix up the latte version.
This is the latte version. And when you smell this, what really pops out is that coconut flavor. And I find that the coconut flavor works well cold, but it overrides the matcha flavor a little bit. When you do it hot, that coconutiness goes away. I think it just evaporates off, and you're left with a nice, sweet, round profile, which actually brings the matcha flavor up a little bit. When I do it cold, I don't have it as much, but I don't have any hot water up here, so we're just going to do it cold. How are the effects for you?
Well, so far the effects have been positive and pleasant, but they're getting more intense as time goes on. So this is the scoop for the Mushroom Magic Matcha Latte BALLER edition. It's quite a big scoop.
Oh, that's not where it has to go. But this does give you a good indication of just how green. Maybe you can see that. It's probably going to be hard, but it's very green. It has a very bright flavor. Even when you just open the jar in a room and you're not directly over it, you can smell the matcha. All right, and here we have it. A very full glass. I put a little bit too much water in. Maybe I take back what I said earlier. It's really good. It's really good cold, actually.
I think they both work super well cold. This Baller edition, because of the high quality matcha, it has a very different overall flavor profile when you make it with cold water. We haven't tried it with milk yet, so that would be something next on the list.
Yes. Which that's usually how I use our Mushroom Magic Matcha, the normal one. I mix it with milk, and I find that gives me the overall best flavor profile. For me, that's even better than the Mushroom Magic Matcha Latte, the regular one. But this, it's starting to really get hard for me to replicate that with just normal milk. So I think earlier I was saying the cold version, you taste quite a bit more of that coconut. But now that I'm tasting it actually mixed with more water, you get more flavor separation, and I'm getting more of those floral matcha notes mingling quite nicely with the coconut notes. So maybe that's one thing that I made a mistake on earlier. I made 1 scoop into a glass that size, which is about 236 milliliters. So we recommend 295 milliliters into hot or cold water. And for hot water, I do like using a little bit less water, around 236 to 295, like what we recommend, because that richness, when something is a little bit hotter, you perceive sweetness in a different way. So I really like it with a little bit less water. But now that I'm tasting this with more water, I think that I'm going to be drinking the latte maybe cold, but with a lot of water. Like maybe I can use like half a liter, so it's more of a sipping beverage that I can put in like a travel bottle when I'm out somewhere exploring. That could be really nice. And as I'm sure you can see here, those couple of sips are really adding to the effects for me. It's getting more and more stimulating. So definitely keep that in mind, that this is a little bit above what the normal Mushroom Magic Matcha does, even at a single scoop. So let's talk about the mushrooms then, before I get super carried away with talking about this, because this is really exciting. We both really like food and beverages. We've worked in that industry for a long time too. So being able to now have a bit of a crossover here is really exciting for us. But we're not going to turn this into a taste review YouTube channel just yet.
No, because you have to try it for yourself and tell us how much you love the Baller editions for yourself. But there's more than just the matcha in this drink mix, and that is the really effective mushroom extracts and mushroom ingredients that are in there. So to get started, we're going to talk about the lion's mane that is in the Baller edition.
Yes, so there's 2 versions of lion's mane now in the Baller edition, and that's Erinamax, which is our Erinacine A standardized liquid culture lion's mane mycelium. So the lion's mane mycelium contains this unique compound called Erinacine A. Erinacine A helps enhance the synthesis of nerve growth factor, NGF, and it helps enhance the release of nerve growth factor. So this has been a kind of a holy grail compound that everyone's been looking for with lion's mane, but it only exists in the mycelium, and it only exists in the mycelium under very strict conditions. We're working with a partner now that has huge bioreactors, and they're able to actually do this liquid culture. So this is not mycelium on grain, which is very common. This is mycelium that's being grown in a liquid broth. So think of it, there's some sugars in there, some nutrients like minerals all mingling together, and that makes a perfect environment for the mycelium to expand. So we basically seed it with a little bit of really high quality mycelium of a cultivar that we really want, and then we're able to expand that in multiple generations and then in really big bioreactors. And then we can filter all of that mycelium away from the liquid that it's in and wash it a little bit, dry it, and powder it, and that's Erinamax. So this is the purest, most high-end lion's mane mycelium I think that exists. I don't know of anyone else standardizing for Erinacine A, and we're standardizing for 0.5%, and I might not even be allowed to say this, but I'm gonna say it anyways. Our partner has recently made a breakthrough, and they're able to now push the Erinacine A concentrations up to about 1%. So we'll see how that changes in the future, but maybe in the future we'll be seeing even stronger batches of Erinamax, which will then also transfer over to the Mushroom Magic Baller edition, where you might even end up with double the concentration of adenosine A, but we have to see if this is actually possible at scale. Right now, at 0.5% adenosine A, it's the highest that we know of because we're the only ones that are standardizing, and so far the reviews have been really glowing with Erinamax, and that's why we wanted to include it here. But it's expensive, so again, it only really fit in the BALLER edition, so we're already setting the price quite high because of the high quality matcha. So let's build it out. Let's go all in then. And a high quality matcha is befitting of high quality mushroom products. Or high quality, all of our mushroom products are high quality premium. We're talking about the best of the best. And Erinamax, in my opinion, for mycelium is the best of the best. Now we combine that with the fruiting body too, because we really believe in this concept of full spectrumness. We want some of the compounds that are in the mycelium, we want some of the compounds that are in the fruiting body, we want to preserve as much bioactive diversity as possible. In our opinion, that usually leads to the most interesting effects. So, Erinamax and then the Lion's Mane 8-to-1 dual water ethanol extract of fruiting bodies, which a lot of people say is one of their favorite Lion's Mane products currently on the market and has a real impact. I actually don't really respond to Lion's Mane that much, but I even feel a little bit from the 8-to-1, which says a lot. So if I'm feeling a little bit from the 8-to-1, it means most people who generally respond well to Lion's Mane are going to have a very pronounced effect with the 8-to-1. And the 8-to-1 mixes really well with the Erinamax, and a lot of people have actually been trying that on Reddit already. So we've had a lot of first-hand anecdotes that that's a nice combination. Now, what also works really well together with Lion's Mane is tiger milk mushroom, and that's because tiger milk mushroom is acting as an NGF mimetic, so it can actually activate the TRKA receptor, which NGF normally does. So now you have three different things coming together: the adenosine A from the mycelium, which is enhancing NGF synthesis and release. Then you have the Lion's Mane 8-to-1, which should contain quite a bit of hericenones too. We're not able to test that yet, so that's just a bit of an educated shot in the dark at this point. But we do know from research that fruiting body extracts, or just the whole fruiting body non-extracted, also has a positive effect on NGF levels, so we're assuming that that's the case here. But we at least have the adenosine A standardized mycelium to really rely on that effect actually being there. But in our opinion, the 8-to-1 really adds a lot there too. And then you have the NGF mimetic effects of tiger milk, and that all comes together for a really strong NGF effect. And NGF has a bit of this norepinephrine-like effect too. We found that out with tiger milk. Tiger milk actually becomes a little bit too stimulating for us over time.
And it also increases, for me, feelings of aggression. I must say, for the Mushroom Magic BALLER edition, I'm definitely experiencing that. With the normal version, I don't experience that at all. The mood boost is really great. It feels lighthearted and generally like really sunshiny, whereas this particular version makes me feel like super serious, getting to business, and definitely more aggressive and more confident. So if you're looking for something to help give you a little bit more of an edge, especially when it comes to an important meeting, conversation, presentation, this would be the matcha that I would choose, is the BALLER edition, because it definitely turns up the intensity and it turns up my motivation, similar to just the tiger milk by itself, but also reminds me of Vignitex, reminds me of Tongat Ali, and a little bit of System X as well.
But to add on to that, I also agree with that, but it's more streamlined and it's more clear and precise than all of those. Like, there's a really unique effect happening here, and it's honestly like flip switches. Like, if I'm sitting there feeling a little bit cloudy, a little bit brain foggy, a little bit unmotivated, uninspired, the BALLER edition really helps punch through that. It gives me that level of clarity, and at the normal dose, it gives me that level of clarity without the overt stimulation that I'm having now. And it's so nice that I want to drink more of that.
I also want to drink more, but I think it's probably safer if we don't. To just finish off the mushroom ingredients in the BALLER edition, so we talked about the Lion's Mane, and we talked about Erinamax. as well as tiger milk. Is there also cordyceps in this version too?
Yes, so there is the Cordyceps dual water ethanol extract, the 10-to-1, and I really like that because it has a physically energizing effect. And maybe you can see it in my hands. I know I normally move my hands around a lot, but I'm feeling a little bit antsy just sitting here. Like I kind of want to go out for a walk or run, a fast bike ride. That's kind of the effect it's giving me. But that's again at that higher dosage level. But if you are looking for a very unique pre-workout, this is interesting too.
Absolutely.
Because I could definitely go to the gym right now and get some of that physical energy out, and that's coming mostly from the Cordyceps 10-to-1, which is having a very nice effect together with the caffeine from the matcha and some of the COMT inhibition that the matcha has, which enhances the stimulating effects of caffeine, and that whole synergy there of the Cordyceps physical energy and then the 3 NGF ingredients together with the caffeine, a little bit more of a norepinephrine, really deep focus type of effect is there. And then we're rounding it out with some Poria mushroom, because Poria mushroom really adds something special to the overall mix in Mushroom Magic Matcha. And we're currently not working with any Poria extracts, but I don't think that really matters in this total context because it adds some more beta-glucans to the mix.
It's also really good for your gut microbiome.
And just overall immune function. And the higher standardized extracts you go, the less beta-glucans you have. So we want to add more beta-glucans in, and Poria and tiger milk are really good to use for that because they're both sclerosiums, which we've discussed in a lot more detail, but a quick overview, it's kind of a root ball almost that's under the ground that acts as an energy reserve, and then when the conditions are perfect, that sclerosium can sprout a fruiting body. But a lot of the nutrients, the bioactives, at very high levels of beta-glucans are contained in that sclerosium under the ground, so we harvest that. So it's not exactly a fruiting body, it's not exactly mycelium, it's kind of this midway point, and sclerosiums are generally very high in beta-glucans. So this is a great way to add beta-glucans into the mix. And another interesting thing that Poria does, it enhances the mouthfeel. So that's definitely why it's in here for flavor purposes too, because it almost adds a sort of creaminess. And I think that's really unique about this, and especially what I was saying earlier, it reminds me of those cold iced matcha green teas that you can get in certain Japanese restaurants, but it's like that with more body and a little bit more velvety, and I really like that overall taste profile. But that's the mushrooms.
So let's make a very quick breakdown and grab our 2 bottles and just tell you what we think in terms of flavor, in terms of ingredients, and just give a little overview of basically the differences between this new BALLER edition and our original edition. So,
which is right here, and I promised you that I would show you what this looks like in the glass. A lot of you probably already know, but then we can actually visually side by side compare them, and it's quite unique what you'll see. So you can maybe see it's already a much more faint green color. It's not as vibrant, it's not as dark, there's not as much chlorophyll. There's 500 milligrams less matcha in here, so it's also a bit more diluted in terms of color. But that deep, vibrant color that we're seeing in the BALLER edition with the very high-end matcha just isn't here, because it's not shade-grown like the BALLER edition is. We're also almost out of this one, so that shows that we're actually using this matcha quite a bit. What number jar is this? I think this is 3 or 4.
This is definitely 3 or 4.
This is Erica's favorite.
I've been drinking this Mushroom Magic Matcha ever since we got it, and I was really enthusiastic about it. I still am, but this BALLER edition is taking things really to the next level in terms of flavor and also effects. So I'm excited to be able to drink this BALLER edition.
All right, the big reveal.
So this is our first version of Mushroom Magic Matcha. As you can see, the color is quite a bit less vibrant. It's a little bit more brown. We definitely don't have this super bright green matcha color coming through.
And what else?
It's not as foamy.
No foam at all.
No foam at all.
And again, a very full glass. Really, at this dilution level, it's really neutral in flavor. It's very pleasant. It has a nice sweetness to it from the stevia, which I find works really well together with that matcha. It's really nice.
It's super nice, but when you check it out in comparison to the BALLER edition, you can see just how dramatically different the color is. So this is the BALLER edition. This is the original edition. This one is also a little bit less opaque as well. This one still has foam on top.
I want to have now a side by side. I actually haven't done this yet. So yeah, really serious matcha flavor. I don't taste the mushrooms in here. This is a real treat. Like, pick this up if you're into matcha and you just want that matcha flavor. You get it here, and it perfectly masks the mushrooms, and then you get all of the benefits of the mushrooms and the standardized caffeine amount in here. It's so hard to compare them. Like, this tastes like absolutely nothing compared to this.
So for anyone who's a fan of the original version of Mushroom Magic Matcha, if you're ready to splurge and you want to experience really dialed in effects from matcha as well as from the mushrooms, definitely give the BALLER a try, because it really is on a completely different level. And it's difficult for us not to drink the entire cup of the BALLER edition. Before we move on to the last product of this video, let's just give a quick breakdown and grab those bottles of the BALLER edition to tell you what's in them, what we like about them, and what makes them different from our original Mushroom Magic Matchas. So I have the standard BALLER. Oh, I have the Latte BALLER, and you have the standard BALLER. So,
and again, they contain the same ingredients. The only thing that sets them apart is the coconut creamer.
Yes.
And a bit of cane sugar and a bit of stevia in this one, and not at all in this one. So I think I can just read the ingredient list one time for you, and then we'll know. Ceremonial grade Japanese matcha, 1500 milligrams. Organic Poria extract, standardized to 55% beta-glucan. So I was telling you earlier, it has a very high beta-glucan content. That is super high. It's about as high as you can find in mushrooms. Then our Erinamax liquid culture lion's mane mycelium, standardized to 0.5% adenosine A, and there's 250 milligrams of that in here, and there's 500 milligrams of the Poria. And then we have the lion's mane 8-to-1 dual water ethanol extract, which has 15% beta-glucan. So, like I was saying earlier, that beta-glucan level drops significantly once you start getting extracts. So we want to bring that back in. That's why the Poria and Tiger Milk are in there, unextracted too. Then we have the Cordyceps 10-to-1 dual water ethanol extract, which is standardized to 0.3% cordycepin, and we're doing a lot of work finding what other compounds are in cordyceps, because we think there's something much more interesting coming out or in cordyceps, and maybe we'll come out with that research in the next couple of years. It's going to take a long time, but there's some cool stuff in there. And that's 250 milligrams, and then 250 milligrams of the lion's mane dual water ethanol. I'm not sure if I mentioned that. And then there's the tiger milk mushroom powder. Again, very high beta-glucan level, 50% beta-glucans this time, and we have 150 milligrams of that in there. So there's 5 different mushrooms in here, all pretty much at full doses. Some a little bit under compared to our other products, but that's both for the overall effects. We don't want anything to really stand out in a particular way. We want it all to work together harmoniously. And of course, we can't get too crazy with the pricing. If we doubled the amount of some of these mushrooms, it would become just, it wouldn't make sense economically. So this is a way to get the most premium quality tasting matcha functional beverage. I would gladly say this is probably the best what's on the market currently. There might be some small niche brand that someone makes out in the forest somewhere and only sells on farmers markets. I don't doubt it. There's probably something that tastes this good, but I've never come across something that tastes just this good. If you gave this to me just at a matcha tasting, I would just say it's a high quality matcha. And I really wouldn't know that there's such a high level of really premium novel mushrooms in there, because no one has a liquid culture mycelium to begin with, and definitely no one is putting a liquid culture lion's mane mycelium standardized to adenosine A in a mushroom beverage. So this is really, in my opinion, kind of the pinnacle of what's possible with functional mushroom beverages, and I hope you appreciate the effort that went into that. So now let's talk about dihydromyrecin, and this is an ingredient we've carried for a long time as a big part of the alcohol defense stack. It does most of the heavy lifting in there, and that's because dihydromyrecin speeds up the activity of two separate enzymes. That's alcohol dehydrogenase, which takes alcohol and turns it into acetaldehyde. Acetaldehyde is a very nasty compound. We want to clear it out of our system as quickly as possible, and acetaldehyde is usually what gives us problems with alcohol consumption. Acetaldehyde is broken down by a different enzyme called aldehyde dehydrogenase, specifically ALDH2. So that takes acetaldehyde and turns it into acetate, or as we know it, acetic acid, just vinegar. And that's actually a beneficial compound in our gut. Some of our gut microbes make that, and we have acetate that's being produced by them, and that's positive. So we're taking something quite bad and turning it into something that even has beneficial effects. So in the case of alcohol consumption, what we want to do then with alcohol defense, for example, is at the end of the night, when quite a bit of acetaldehyde has built up, we want to be able to clear it as quickly as possible. So then we take some dihydromycetin containing blend, and that helps speed up the clearance of acetaldehyde, and it helps burn through some of that residual alcohol that's still in your system. So and we can't say the thing that happens to you after a night of drinking. We all like having a drink, within reason, of course, especially now that we're getting older. Even 1 or 2 drinks can have a negative effect the next day, and we like clearing out that acetaldehyde. So we personally like having some dihydromycetin or alcohol defense after some drinks. Also, I personally like having a little bit of dihydromycetin before I even have a drink, and I find that with just the isolated plain dihydromycetin, that trick works the best. Alcohol defense definitely dampens things a little bit too much for me, but with 1 capsule of this, the effects for me actually are a little bit more enjoyable, but again, we can't really go into that all too deeply. The main thing to keep in mind here is that this is just a really good way to upregulate your aldehyde dehydrogenase levels, which is important because we are producing acetaldehyde just within our body. When we break down carbohydrates, for example, we produce some acetaldehyde. We consume acetaldehyde from fruits. When we're outside, there's acetaldehyde in the air because it's also coming from a combustion engine exhaust, and other aldehydes like formaldehyde, or even some of the aldehydes present in our diet. For example, cinnamon contains cinnamaldehyde. This is an aldehyde too. And aldehydes you want to be careful with because they're highly reactive. So they're kind of like reactive oxygen species. They can interact with cells, they can break down compounds, they cause a whole lot of havoc. So anything that's super reactive, we want to be able to clear it out as quickly as possible, and that's of course why our bodies have these enzyme systems in place to deal with it. But not all of us actually have such high ALDH2 activity. For example, if you look in certain Asian countries, Japan, funnily enough, being a country where a lot of people have reduced ALDH2 activity, you see that they oftentimes have a bit of a problem when they consume alcohol because they start to flush. This flushing reaction is actually caused by building up acetaldehyde levels because their ALDH2 activity is not working properly. Now, this is annoying in terms of alcohol consumption, but it also means that just general aldehyde clearance isn't as high in these people. And just globally, there's a lot of genetic polymorphisms which can decrease ALDH2 activity a little bit. And just generally, I think with the level of air pollution sometimes and more aldehydes there, I think it's just generally a good idea to keep your ALDH2 levels up. So that's also one of the reasons why we released it as a standalone, because alcohol defense actually works really well kind of as a general nootropic that you can take every day, but the effects are quite complex. If you want it a bit more simple and a bit more budget friendly, you just want to take regular dihydromycetin daily. And we've done quite a few experiments with taking alcohol defense daily, and I really like it. I just don't think pyroglutamic acid is exactly the right compound for me to be taking every day. I don't seem to react all too well to it after about a month. So I'm really excited for this, and we'll be adding this to our stack because I do feel really good when I'm clearing out a little bit more of those aldehydes, I think. Resveratrol is another one that can have a positive effect on some of these enzymes, and I feel really good on that too. So for me, there seems to be a clear benefit to upregulating my ALDH2 levels. So this is quite multifunctional because you can take it before a drink, you can take it after a drink, or you can just take it daily and upregulate those ALDH2 levels. But then there's a lot of other interesting stuff going on with this. So for example, dihydromycetin upregulates a protein called gefferin, and gefferin helps transport GABA-A receptors. So it can grab GABA-A receptors and put it in the neurons where you want that GABAergic activity. So by doing that, dihydromycetin can actually upregulate GABA-A receptors, which over time can lead to a nice relaxing effect. Kind of similar to what Bacopa monnieri does, but I find that this doesn't produce any level of lethargy, which is really nice. Additionally, it seems to upregulate BDNF levels quite significantly, and it dampens neuroinflammation, and those two together seem to have a rapid mood-boosting effect too. So that enhanced GABAergic activity, BDNF, reduced neuroinflammation, produces a really interesting cognitive effect. I think that also has a generally positive effect on cognitive function. I feel a little bit sharper when I'm taking dihydromycetin, so that's really nice. Additionally, dihydromycetin is really good for your liver. So this is a good liver support product. And another thing that's really nice about dihydromycetin is that it has a positive effect on metabolic function and all of the effects associated with metabolic function not going completely right. It helps dial it in a little bit more. It also has interesting effects on nerve pain, for example, because aldehyde dehydrogenase seems to play a role there. So this is a very unique compound to look into if you have nerve pain and you want to tackle it from a completely novel angle. And of course, the inflammation reducing effects probably help here too. And am I missing anything else? Yes, it also has good effects on gut microbial diversity. And we won't have released the podcast with Mr. Happy, but this is now, if you've made it this far into the video, you know that's coming. On Tuesday, we're releasing a podcast with Joshua, Mr. Happy from the Mr. Happy stack, Omega Tau, if you're familiar with that. And we actually talk about dihydromycetin, aldehyde, and how that can have a beneficial effect on overall health. So keep an eye out for that. But it's a very, very versatile compound, something that really surprised us. And the interesting thing is that there's a lot of new research coming out about it. So we're constantly learning more about dihydromycetin, and that was also the final push that we needed to release it as a standalone. And of course, I've been nagging because I want to take dihydromycetin myself. So a bit of a selfish act on my part, but I hope you will have a lot of fun playing around with dihydromycetin too.
Absolutely. So those are the new products for this month. We have our dihydromycetin, we have our Mushroom Magic BALLER edition, we have our Mushroom Magic Matcha Latte BALLER edition, and that's it for this month. So if you want to try out some of these new products for yourself, go visit us online, nootropicsdepot.com, and check out our new products. You can order them via the link that I'm going to add in the description. And as always, definitely reach out to us on Reddit. Our subreddit is r/nootropicsdepot. Let us know what you think of the new products that you've been trying lately, and if you've ordered any of these new products. And stick around because on Tuesday of the following week, we're going to be releasing a new podcast with Mr. Happy, like Emil said, and we're really excited for you to hear all of the fascinating information that we discuss with Joshua in this new podcast. So definitely check us out on YouTube, on your favorite streaming platforms, and subscribe on Reddit because you'll be getting all of the notifications for the new podcast episode as well. So without further ado, that's all we have for you today. And until next time, see ya!
See ya!